Are we walking through the red squirrel?
Look at that.
Yeah, you say, yeah. George, see you.
Quick look. Yeah, we'll come back over here. Yeah. When's gonna miss Holly?
Right, hi guys, welcome to our tapir enclosure. So my name's Will, I'm one of the keepers here at Peak, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about our two resident tapir, Tia and George. So obviously they're both right here with us at the front. We've got George on the right and Tia on the left. Now you might have noticed when I came over, George is usually a little bit more timid, he's definitely the shyer of the two, whereas Tia is very food orientated, so as long as I've got food in my hand she'll come wherever I go. As you can see, they'll make quite quick work of these branches. Now Tia and George are a type of tapir called a lowland tapir, so they're one of 4 species of tapir that are found all around the world. Now 3 of those species, including the lowland tapir, are found in Central and South America, and then the last species is found all the way on the other side of the world in Southeastern Asia. Now the lowland tapir is the second largest of the 4 species, so they're big. You can see that they're big. They're actually the largest land mammal native to South America, so you won't find anything bigger out in South America. Now they are native to the Amazon rainforest predominantly, but then they are quite widespread, so they're found in all sorts of different large areas of forest across South America, up to the Atlantic forest, and then all the way down into countries like Peru and Chile you'll find lowland tapir as well, so they're very, very widespread. Now the most iconic thing really about tapir are those noses, so you can see how they use their noses. So its main purpose is to manipulate their food. So tapir are generalist herbivores, which means they'll eat all sorts of different plants out in the wild. If it's made of plant matter and it's safe to eat, they will eat it. So that is mostly branches and leaves, but it's also weeds and grasses. Quite a lot of their diet, however, will be from the water. So tapir are considered to be semi-aquatic, so they will spend a significant amount of time out in the rivers. Now we have the large pond in here for them, and they do go in it a lot on a sunny, warm day. And obviously when it's a little bit cooler like it has been the past few days, they do tend to stay where it's nice and warm inside. But it's very important to give tapir the opportunity to swim. So like I say, they'll eat a lot of their food from the bottom of the water. They'll crawl along the bottom like a hippo, and then when they need a breath of fresh air, the second purpose of that proboscis, which is what we call their nose, it's not the trunk, is they'll kick off with their back feet and they'll stick just the tip of that nose out of the water like a snorkel, and it allows them to get them a breath of fresh air without being seen by any predators. Now it's a little bit of a tough question. Does anyone have any guesses what their predator is out in South America? There's only really one animal that can hunt them. So it's jaguars. Now jaguars are by far the largest, most dangerous predator out in South America, and like I say, they're the only thing really that stands a chance against an adult tapir. But conveniently, the lowland tapir have developed a very, very special technique at avoiding and defending against jaguars. So on the back of their heads, you'll see they've got this big meaty lump. Now they're the only of the 4 species to have that meaty hunk, and they are also the only of the 4 species to coexist with jaguars. So that is a jaguar guard. Now the way jaguars hunt is they pounce from surprise and they crush the back of the skull and the top of the spine. So tapir have got a big fatty shield on that part of their body, so it means that when the jaguars go to hunt them, they get stuck on this and they can't get their jaws to their actual spine. And that gives the tapir a chance to shake them off, and then usually they'll run them down. As I say, these guys are the biggest animal out in South America, and they can run up to 30 miles an hour. So once the jaguar's lost that element of surprise, it doesn't really stand a chance against an angry adult tapir. Now saying that, whilst the adults aren't predated on much else, the babies are quite susceptible to things, particularly because they do spend so much time by the river. So babies would be susceptible to things like anacondas, caiman, also bush dogs, which you guys have probably seen down at the entrance to the park, and they will quite happily take a baby tapir. Now in order to stay nice and safe from predators, the babies have a very special technique, and that is camouflage. So I don't know if you've ever seen a picture of a baby tapir, but they look like humbug mints. They're completely stripy and spotty all over, and that means that mum can leave them in the reeds and they've got an extra level of defence against the predators that will be at the edge of the water. Now obviously we've not got a breeding pair, we've got brother and sister, so they've been with us since 2019. So George is 15 and Tia is 14. here is 14. So they're effectively middle-aged for a tapir. So generally in captivity they can get up to 30, even past 30. So they are quite long-lived. But as I say, these two aren't part of any breeding programs. And the reason for that is because they're so hardy and long-lived, we can't just endlessly breed them because there'll be nowhere for them to go. Tapir are also generally considered to be completely solitary animals. So in the wild, they would not be living in groups, they would be roaming on their own, eating as much as they can. So we couldn't just bring 2 or 3 more tapir in here, they would probably fight quite quickly. Now Georgian tear get on very, very well, but they've spent their whole lives together. They are particularly close to tapir. You don't really see this, usually they do stay quite apart from each other when they're outside. So there are actually only a few collections in the UK that are allowed to breed tapir, just so we don't get a crazy number. Now tapir are a very unique animal in the animal kingdom. There's nothing else really like them, which does mean that people are usually quite confused as to what they're related to. So we get lots of guesses, and anteater's probably the most common one because of that long nose, also pig and hippo, but they're not remotely related to any of those animals. This nose would be completely inefficient at eating ants. It's perfect for eating vegetables. Does anyone know what their actual closest relative is? So it's horses and rhinos. So these guys are in the family Perissodactyla, which basically means odd toes. So if you look at their hooves, you'll see they've got 3 toes on each foot. They've technically got 4 on the front foot because it's like a dog's dew claw where it doesn't make contact. But that 3-toed foot is very rare among hooved animals. So the only other hooved animal with 3 toes is a rhino. So rhinos are their closest relative. And then also in that family are horses. So again, it means odd-toed, not 3-toed. So horses have that single toe. But fossil evidence of horses' ancestors have shown they basically developed from a foot structure very, very similar to that of the tapir. So as I say, they do have that proboscis on the front of their faces, and that is an amazing tool. So it's a little bit like an elephant's trunk, but it can't hold water, so it has like a significant difference. And as I say, it's mainly used for manipulating brows or licking our faces. They've got an amazing sense of smell as well with that big nose that's covered in receptors to be able to smell different plants out in South America. As I say, they're incredibly food orientated, so they usually come over when we come in with some branches. Now, because that nose is so effective, it's allowed the tapir to exist in their current form for a very, very long time. So the tapir are known as a fossil species, which means we've got fossil evidence of tapir from about 30 million years ago, which means they walked alongside the mammoths. They've existed in their current form for a very, very long period of time. Being a tapir works. It's a very effective form of being a herbivore. The downside to that is that now we're wiping them out. So currently the lowland tapir is listed as vulnerable. They are the most abundant of the tapir in captivity and also in the wild as well. The other 3 species of tapir are all endangered or critically endangered. Now the main threat, like many animals living in the Amazon rainforest, is deforestation. So as I say, the tapir are solitary and they do tend to stay in the darkest, deepest, densest parts of the forest. The downside to this is that when it comes to breeding season, because they're chopping down so much of the Amazon, they're having to cross open farmland, open roads to find a mate during that breeding season. One of their main causes of death in the wild is unfortunately roadkill at the minute, because they're having to cross these massive highways that have been built across South America. They have also been poached in the past, so apparently tapir doesn't taste very nice, so they've never been hunted for their meat, but the native Amazon tribes have always used them for their leather. So tapir are pachyderms, which basically means thick skin like an elephant or a rhino, and it means that their skin makes amazingly strong leather for things like armour and furniture, and the Amazon tribes have used it for many, many generations. Luckily it's not been done at a rate that's uncontrollable. Again, it is that deforestation, unfortunately, that's having such a big impact on their population. So we do work with a charity called the Lowland Tapir Conservation Initiative, and a lot of their work at the minute is just trying to establish how many we've got. So we say they're vulnerable, but we don't actually really know how many lowland tapir we've got because they're so secretive. So the charity are mainly working at the minute to establish that number through camera traps and through tracking their footprints and things like that. It's allowing us to get a bit of a better idea of how many we have out in the wild and also where they are, so we can do very focused conservation efforts in those areas. One of the things that the Brazilian government in particular are doing at the minute is building tapir highways. So a little bit how we have them for frogs and toads over here, and they're building massive tunnels underneath the road so that the tapir can cross without having to go on the open road. One benefit to the tapir being so big is that when they are involved in road collisions, it's very detrimental for the people as well. So that's putting some urgency for the government to do something about it because they have value on the people, and unfortunately not necessarily the tapir. There is quite a big stigma out in South America about tapir. Being called a tapir is like how we call people a donkey. They're seen as stupid animals, and unfortunately that negative stigma means there's not a lot of support out in South America directly for these guys, unfortunately. There is also a lot of misinformation. So one of the reasons I always point out about anteaters, they did a survey in South America holding up a picture of a tapir saying what animal is this, and the majority of people in their home country said it was an anteater, not a tapir. We just need to get the word out about these guys because again they're very special. They've been with us for millions and millions of years, and so it'll be a real shame to lose them now. And so that's about everything I'm going to say, guys. I will hang around for a few minutes, so if you do have any questions about the tapir or any other animal in the park, do come over and ask. The next talk of the day will be at 12 o'clock, and it'll be up at the penguin enclosure. So if you do want to see the penguins have their lunch, do head over to the penguin beach at 12. Hopefully the weather holds off, but it's a very black cloud, but hopefully it passes over and we can stay nice and dry today. So I hope you've had a good day so far. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Figure out how to say the other end. No, I just couldn't think of what to work it out.
Where's the capybaras?
Not sure. Can't see.
Cute. Look, got babies, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Kiss him up? Kiss him up?
Look!
Little baby's pop back in.
Oh, it's coming.
There you go. There you go, Tilda.
It's not a dog.
Look, it's got a car wash. It's got a car wash to go through.
How do Sylvia? I think. Yeah, they know.
Hello, okay, afternoon everyone and welcome to Big Wildlife Park. So here we are at our penguin beach. So we're just going around giving the penguins a few fish at the moment. So Ollie is up there just throwing some fish out to the penguins in the top pool. We have got some down here at the bottom pool. So hopefully wherever you're standing you will be able to see a penguin being fed at the moment. So whilst you're watching these guys have something, I'm going to just tell you a little bit about them. So this species of penguin is called the Humboldt penguin, and you can find them in the wild in South America. So I know that we normally think of penguins as being cold climate animals. You think of them standing in the snow in the Antarctic like you see on TV. But the truth is, the world's a big place. There are lots of different species of penguin in the world. So some come from hot countries and some come from cold countries. So so you can find penguins in Africa, you can find penguins in Australia, you can find penguins on the Galapagos Island, and you can find them in South America like these guys. So they are native to Peru and Chile in the wild. So they are actually warm climate penguins. So one of the things that people always ask us here at the park is, okay, if these are warm climate penguins, if these come from hot sunny countries like Peru and Chile, what on earth are they doing here in the UK? Because obviously most of the year round it's not hot and sunny, of course most of the year it's cold and wet. But bear in mind that penguins spend about 80% of their time in the water. So they are basically already equipped to deal with cold, wet conditions. So what you'll find is that they actually have two layers of feathers. They have an outer layer, which keeps these guys nice and waterproof. And then underneath they have another layer of feathers, which is shorter and more coarse, and they trap in the nice warm air and keep them nice and insulated. So when they're swimming in the water or standing in the rain on cold days, though the penguins themselves look cold and wet to us, the actual animal is quite warm and dry because they've always got those waterproof coats and those nice warm jumpers on underneath. So they eat different amounts based on different times of the year. So this time of year it is currently nesting season. So we've actually got 21 adult penguins that live here at the park. You're probably looking at thinking, I cannot see 21 penguins on that beach. Most of them are actually nesting at the moment. So these what look like rocks around the beach, these aren't actually rocks, these are our penguins' nest boxes. So a lot of them are in there at the moment. And of course, when they were nesting, they're not swimming, so they're not working up quite as much of an appetite. So that's why a lot of them don't look overly hungry at the moment. So they also go through an annual molt, so you might notice some of our penguins are also looking a little bit scruffy. This happens every single year. They go through a same molt every year where they basically puff out their old feathers. They look a little bit shaggy for a while. They don't look. They look a bit like they've been dragged through a hedge for a couple of weeks. They don't really like it very much this time of year. They sort of feel a little bit uncomfortable, but once they shed those old feathers, they look very, very smart underneath. So you'll probably even notice in the pool there's feathers floating around in there. That's where our penguins have started molting. So it is perfectly natural. They do it every single year, but like I say, they don't really like it very much. It's not their favourite time of year. So I'll tell you a little bit about the conservation status of the penguins now. So Humboldts are classed as a vulnerable species. In fact, sadly, they are very close, unfortunately, to being classed as an endangered species. And there's several problems affecting this. So, obviously, in the wild, they have natural predators. Now, you might think that as penguins spend 80% of the time in the water, their natural predator would be something like sharks or seals or aquatic predators. But there's a reason they spend 80% of the time in the water, and penguins, that is their safe zone. So when they're in the water, they can swim very, very quickly. They can swim up to 30 miles an hour. They can actually dive very deep. They're camouflaged in the water. So, of course, one thing that everyone knows about penguins is that they're black and white. More specifically, they're black on the back and white on the front. And there's a reason for this. If you're a shark or a seal or a predator that's likely to eat a penguin in the water, if you're swimming in the ocean, you look down, the bottom of that ocean looks very, very dark underneath you. Similarly, if you're swimming in the water and you look up, that sky looks very white above you. So if you swim above a penguin, you look down, that penguin's black back blends nicely into the ocean floor. And if you swim beneath a penguin, you look up, that penguin's white front blends into the white sky. So whichever direction a predator looks at a penguin in the water, that bird is actually quite well hidden. As you can see though, when they're on land, they aren't quite so well hidden, are they? So they can't walk very quickly, they certainly can't fly, they aren't camouflaged. They're like little black and white waddling skittles when they're on land, basically. They're sitting ducks, they're quite vulnerable. So even when they're not swimming, you'll notice no one is always swimming in the bottom pool at the moment, but they don't stray too far from the water's edge. And this is because if a predator comes along, if something was to scare these guys, they need to be able to get into the water and get themselves away nice and quickly. So that is why they don't stray too far from the water. And for that reason, their main predators are actually land-based predators rather than aquatic predators, what you might expect. So particularly for these guys, it is the Andean fox that is the main predator to a Humboldt penguin. So that's natural predators covered. Now, unfortunately, that is the only natural problem that these guys encounter in the wild. The other problems are all things that we've done. They're all man-made issues. So this is really, really sad. And we are talking about things like, I know everybody talks about climate change, it's because it affects the whole planet. So you might think of climate change affecting cold places. It also affects warm places. It has a knock-on effect all over the world. So in the southern hemisphere, where these guys live, there's a natural phenomenon which is known as El Nino. I'm not going to bother you with all the details. All you need to know is it basically means that the ocean temperature is becoming a lot warmer than it naturally should be. Now, that's not such a big problem for the penguins themselves. They just get a nice warm swim every day rather than a nice cold swim. They don't really mind too much, but the problem is, of course, the fish that the penguins eat live in that first 20 metre surface area of the ocean. If it's becoming too warm, it's becoming too warm for the fish to live. It's killing off the fish, and of course, that is the penguins' food. So no fish, no penguins. So climate change is a big problem for these guys. Overfishing, again, whilst we talk about fish, overfishing, a real problem for the penguins. We've now got more fishing ships than we've ever had before. They are better technology, they're bigger, they can carry more fish than they ever have. And as a result, they are taking more than their fair share of fish away from the oceans. Now, I know we all love our fish, we all love our fish fingers and our sushi, but do bear in mind, like I say, more ships are going out there now, taking these fish away, and that is having a knock-on effect on all the animals that live in the ocean. Again, that's the penguins' food. That is a big problem for these guys. So overfishing is a big problem. But all of these things are things that are stopping them from getting their numbers up in the wild. They're not what caused the drop in the first place. That actually began around sort of mid-1900s, and that was due to something called guano harvesting. So I don't know if you guys know the term guano. You might have seen a little bit of it getting produced on this beach. If you stick your head in a penguin nest box, you will certainly smell guano. It is a nice name for penguin poo. So it's a common term for seabird poo. Bat poo is also called guano, but in this instance we're talking about penguin poo. Now penguin poo is a very important material for these guys because they actually use it to build their nests out of. It sounds gross to us, but when it dries rock solid, and it makes almost a concrete-like substance. So penguins, of course, when they're building nests, need this concrete. So they'll go out to the beaches, they'll gather all the nesting materials, they'll get all the sticks and twigs and stones and leaves, etc. Then they're going to put that nest in. And then when they're happy with that nest, they're going to sit in there and they need to stick it together. So they're going to poo a lot. They're going to sit in there and poo in that nest. And when it sets rock solid, and it gives these guys a nice, safe, comfortable nest for them to lay their eggs in. Albeit a very smelly nest, like I say, I don't recommend sticking your hand in a penguin nest. They are very, very smelly things, but they are just how the penguins like them. Now, unfortunately, the problem is that guano is a very good material for somebody other than penguins. And this somebody is farmers. So around the mid-1900s, what happened is farmers in South America suddenly realised that guano, penguin poo, is a very effective crop fertiliser. And what they started doing was harvesting penguin nests. So they'd actually go out to these beaches with the big diggers and the tractors, and they would destroy these nests, tearing them apart in order to extract this fertiliser. Any penguins in there at the time would have been killed, any eggs would have been destroyed, and it became a huge, huge industry. It became a massive industry for the farming community in South America. It became such a big industry, it caused a massive drop in these guys' numbers. Now, luckily, guano harvesting does still happen, but it's a lot more controlled than it used to be now that these guys are actually a protected species now. But the problem is, of course, they've already done the damage. It had such a big effect, it caused that drop in their numbers. And now, they are finding it very difficult to get those numbers back up again, like I say, because of those problems that I've already mentioned, natural predators, climate change, and overfishing. So these are big problems that affect these guys. Luckily, there are lots of organisations that work out with the penguins in South America. So here at the park, we support a charity called Spinisco. And Spinisco actually operates out in Peru and Chile, and they do a lot of very important work. They do some rescue and release work, but they do also mostly beach conservation work. They're basically conserving the areas for these guys so that they have nice, safe, comfortable homes where they won't be disturbed, and then they can lay their eggs, raise their chicks, etc. So they do a lot of fantastic work. So that is Spinisco. If any of you guys have donated, if any of you guys have adopted any of our penguins here at the park, you've actually probably already donated some money to this charity, even if you didn't realise it. Because the money that goes towards those adoption packs, some of it goes to buy the fish, to feed the penguins here at the park, so it helps the penguins that live here, and some of it goes all the way to South America to help the conservation of these penguins in the wild as well. So thank you very much for that. Right, well, thank you very much for listening to me. I'm sorry that most of the penguins were very hungry at the moment. Like I say, it is a little bit hit and miss this time of year, but that's absolutely fine. I do really appreciate you guys standing and listening. So I will be around for a little longer. Please do feel free to ask if you have any questions. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of your afternoon. If anybody's interested, the enclosure just behind us with the plastic sheet going around the top, that is our lemur enclosure. We're going to be giving our lemurs their lunch in about 45 minutes. So 1 o'clock across there, that's the place to be if you wanted to watch our lemurs have their dinner. And yeah, in the meantime, enjoy the rest of your afternoon here at the park.
Recycling is just reducing demand, going out into more rainforest, cutting down more trees, and then also shopping sustainably. So keep an eye out on any paper or wood products. If you see a logo that says FSC, that stands for the Forest Stewardship Council. That basically means that that product has been sourced sustainably, so it's not endangering any animals out in the wild. So go for those ones rather than the ones without that stamp on. Now I will wrap my tools up there. If anyone does have any questions,
They enjoy sunbathing. They don't enjoy spiritual meditation, but they do enjoy sunbathing. They're eating the leaves.
Yeah, that's what they do.
Yeah, they're eating. They're going yum yum yum. They're eating this. They're enjoying it. Yum 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 yum. Yummy yummy snack. I bet like the food.
There's so many different sorts.
One climbed on your arm and they didn't even want to jump.
Yeah.
No, it was raining.
Take it as your own. Your fake tail.
I do not know. Feel it yourself. I do not know.
Keeps us smoking and having the same one.
I like this guy, he's just surveying his land. Look.
Got a new friend.
Are they laying on another one? It looks like, oh yeah, they're laying on top of one.
Down there.
See if I did look at the deers now. Let's go back.
It's Tom.
When I am at home,
Have you got a good picture of it?
Yeah, it's over there.
oh my god, yeah. Have you seen the Arctic fox as well? Come on, Ina, come on, let's go look at the star. Bye, then. Bye, darling. Yeah. Come on then.
Come on, rat bag. Come on, rat bag. Nina, come on.
Come on. Let's go then. Otherwise you'll chuck you over to polar bears.
Yeah, have you so disappointed that you've had this before? I've done another one. No, literally just two ways. They absolutely love them. Especially when they're brand new. They've had it before, they're like, this already smells like it.
At least I came towards you. Well,
Oh, he's in.
keep filming.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Peak Wildlife Park. My name is Callan, and it's my pleasure to introduce you to our beautiful polar bear boys just here in front of us. Now, as you can see, we have two polar bears. We've got Nanu, who's the one closest to us, just towards me now. He is the slightly bigger of the two, and he's got a much wider, shorter nose. Nori is looking like he might jump in. That would be great. Got Missy. Hopefully someone got a good photo of that. But he is Nori. He is the slightly smaller of the two, and he has a much longer, narrower nose. When you see them up close, they actually look quite different. Now these two are twin boys, so they are exactly the same age. They turned 4 at the end of November, so they are coming up for their 5th birthday at the end of this year, which means that these are still juveniles. They are actually still growing at this point. Now polar bears generally finish growing around about 6 years old, and these two could put on another 100 to 200 kilos. Currently they weigh around 500 kilos, half a ton already, but they have got a little bit extra to grow. And these guys will be mature at around 6, and they are very much happy to live together way into their adulthood. Now these guys here have been with us for just over 2.5, in fact coming up for 3 years now this summer, and they have grown phenomenally in that time, because polar bears actually start off life as 600-gram babies. They are about the size of a guinea pig when they're first born, and you can see here just how quickly they grow in just a few short years. Now these are about where they live and how the yearly cycle goes for them. Now out in the winter, it's probably exactly what you're expecting, but worse. It's very, very cold, very, very dark. They have what they call a polar night in the Arctic, which is when it literally doesn't get light for weeks on end. So we have here, with the darker days, the shorter days, that is nothing compared to the top of the world, where they literally don't have a sunrise for weeks. Now what this means for polar bears is it's about minus 40 degrees Celsius, very tough conditions, very, very stormy, lots of ice, lots of wind. And this means that polar bears actually really do struggle. Although we often assume they love the snow and ice, it's actually more of the point that they have evolved to survive it. Most other animals just wouldn't be able to thrive in that environment at all, but polar bears can go through their winter months. Now what they will do in the winter is very much conserve energy, and we do see that here as well. These two will often sleep for days and days on end. You'll see them in the back of their cave there, and they often sleep there all afternoon, most of the week. Now this is completely normal for them, because out in the wild, they would generally shut down most of their body. Although they don't truly hibernate, they do eat far less frequently. And that's because the technique they need to use is very much down to luck rather than down to skill. And it's called still hunting or sit and wait hunting. Now what they will do is literally sit and wait by the edge of the ice, sitting by a hole and just hoping that a seal pops up. Because what a polar bear wants to be eating is seal blubber. It is ringed seals and bearded seals. That's the vast majority of their diet in the wild. And during the winter months, they are lucky to catch one a week. Not very frequent at all. So they will gorge and fill up their bellies as much as they physically can. Now springtime is a little bit different because although it's still very, very cold, still right down to -20, they actually have thinner ice during that time. Still plenty thick to hold a polar bear, but actually the seals are spending more time out on top of the ice rather than just below it in the water. So polar bears can actively track and hunt their prey, which means that they are far more successful. There's a lot more skill involved and less hope. And therefore they are able to really fill their bellies, and they're going to be successful several times a week at that time of year. Now what this means is that their bodies follow suit. As soon as it's getting warmer and getting hotter, bodies want to eat lots. Their appetite goes through the roof and their energy levels go through the roof as well. During spring, a breeding female can actually triple in weight, and the reason for that is they are preparing for summertime. Now summertime is when I basically ask you to forget everything you assume you know about polar bears, and trust me on this, you can Google it later. It's actually much warmer in the Arctic during the summertime than most people are aware of. If you have a look at what polar bears are doing out in the summer, have a little Google later, polar bears in the summer, and just look at the pictures alone, and it will show you a very different story to what we assume is happening. Now during that time of year, it can be right up to 25 degrees Celsius and above. It can be incredibly warm and sunny, and that means that there is no snow and ice in the Arctic, or the vast majority of the Arctic. Now what that means for polar bears is that they stand out like a sore thumb. So there's actually no hunting happening now, very little hunting, because the seals will see them coming from a mile off, and therefore they are not going to be very successful. So instead, while they're living on the land masses, polar bears will be eating things like grasses and sea kelp. They will eat berries and other fruits, things like caribou or reindeer if they can catch hold of them, things like goose eggs that happen to be literally on the floor at that time of year. They will go after things like leftovers from other predators. They've been seen in local towns trying to raid through bins, and in the local tip as well, just looking for scraps to survive off. So you can see why spring is so important and why they need to put on so much weight and get really chunky, ready for summer. Because actually the polar bears out in the wild are having to survive off the reserves, all the fat that they built up in the spring while they are on land in the summer. Now for these two here, obviously they can eat whatever they want at any time of year, but they follow exactly the same cycle. During the winter time, they don't want to eat very much, they sleep a lot more, and as soon as the spring kicks in, we want to eat lots. Now they're very confused at the moment as to whether it is spring or still winter. I think we all feel the same, because it's been so cloudy, so dark, and we've actually had snow this month. They are very, very confused. Which is why they are in a bit of a weird schedule. The fact that they're awake is actually amazing, because recently they've been going to bed at about 1:30 just before this talk. But fingers crossed, spring is on the way, which means the boys get lots more energy and are ready to start play fighting lots more. Now out in the wild, what the polar bears are waiting for over the summer is for the ice to come back in the autumn, which currently actually doesn't arrive back until about November, so much, much later than it used to. And herein lies the biggest threat to polar bears out in the wild, and the reason that they are a vulnerable species currently. Now this is where I often lose half an audience, because I'm going to say magic words. I'm going to say climate change. Nobody came here to listen to me talk about climate change, and I completely understand that. But actually, I can't talk about these beautiful, iconic animals without speaking about the thing that's actually threatening them the most out in the wild. Now the reason that they are struggling are the emissions that we produce actually get trapped in our atmosphere. Now our atmosphere is very much like a heat-trapping blanket, and as we produce things like carbon dioxide in large quantities, we add to that blanket and it traps more and more heat in and it melts the ice that these guys rely on. Now that can feel very, very doom and gloom, and how can we possibly slow that down? But luckily there are lots of ways that we can do it that are actually very, very easy to get started with. Now this could be as small as making sure when we are at home and we're not using the lights in a specific room, we just switch them off. It could be making sure that we switch off things that are buzzing away in the background but aren't being used. Whether that be the things that are on standby or the fully charged iPad, just switching it off can actually save electricity and help these guys out in the wild. It could be bigger things, it could be recycling schemes, it could be cycle to work schemes, it could be even bigger than that, using our votes to make sure we are voting as correct as possible, making sure that we are trying to do our best, maybe walking down to the shop rather than jumping in the car, but it's very, very convenient. It could even be trying to encourage those companies around us to go carbon neutral. Now there are lots of companies that help you to do this, and one of my very, very favourites for lots of suggestions on how to help save the polar bear is Polar Bears International. Polar Bears International is a charity we work with here at Peak Wildlife Park. We're part of their Climate Alliance programme. I'm very, very pleased to be so. They have been here a couple of times to visit to make sure we're doing everything right by our boys. We have actually sent our headkeeper out to them to visit out in Churchill, Canada as well. Very, very cool. And if you have a look at their website, it is full of information and lots of beautiful photographs of polar bears out in the wild. Now that's all from me for now, guys. But if you do want to head to the next talk, that is at 3 p.m. today. That's down the hill at our Red Panda enclosure at 3 o'clock. Just head down the hill and stick to the left. It's just after the teepees and the otter enclosure. They will be fed at 3. But if you have any more questions about these guys, I'll be at the top of the hill here. Very happy to answer any that you have. Otherwise, guys, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day. See you later. Bye.
Otters are here.
Something's happening.
No,
That's right, look. Over the glass. Here. You see him now? Otter. What's the name from?
Where have they gone?
Through the bushes.
I think that was the one that was there earlier.
Dandy, we've lost you, Dad. Come on.
Right. Yeah, no. I paid him for most of those, he said to you on the sexy one.
Look.
Take that.
Small children going in and hitting them, so they just keep running at them.
Where's the small children?
My legs always so much. And I'm going to hide it quietly.